Hey, Chef Corso, Outdoor Eats. I'm here to put you on the path to amazing meals on your outdoor treks, and I am sitting here on night 5 of a 6-day backpacking trip. Yep, 5 nights, 6 days, one more day to go. And if you like ladders, multiple ladders, going up and down them in maybe the rain, if you like long walks on the beach, walking on slippery boardwalks, going over cable cars, over rivers, minding the tides, hiking over big old growth roots, most likely wet and most likely slipping on them. If you like going on ferries, hiking through lush forests, eating wild berries, seeing whales, seals, big trees, dense forest, gorgeous coves, in all kinds of different rocks, you are going to love this video, and you would absolutely love the West Coast Trail. In this video, we're going to go over the permit that you need, travel logistics to get there, our route that we took on this hike, how I planned our meal plan for 5 nights, 6 days with 3 hungry guys, all in the backcountry, what we ate, when we ate it, where we camped, how our trip was, how our meal plan went, and final thoughts and tips if you want to do this hike in the future. See you at the end. Step 1, the permit. Yes, you do need a permit for this hike, and they will check it multiple times. So don't be a sneaky weasel and just try to do this trail without one. It's really, really important that they know how many people are on the trail and to keep you safe if anything does happen. So you need a permit. I had this permit in 2020. Obviously couldn't do it because of, the world. And I've been trying to get this ever since, and I got really, really lucky this year. Check the website for when they become available, but they do go really, really fast. So if you do want to do this trail next year, mark it on your calendar. You and whoever buddies that you want to go on this trail with is mark it on your calendar and wake up and get in line, because sometimes you're going to end up being number 2,000 in line and you might not get it. I got very, very lucky this year to be able to get this permit for 3 people for our trip. And speaking of those 3 people, who's joining me on this trip? I'm not doing a solo trip. This is a big adventure, and it's way more fun to share this whole experience. So joining me on this trip are 2 great buddies. One, Nate. He's a great friend from college. He is very, very experienced in the backcountry. He's a hunter and fisherman, and he does scouting trips all the time. And also joining me is my other great friend, Rolland. He used to work for Leave No Trace for a number of years. He consistently takes people on trips down the Grand Canyon, and I'm really, really excited about having both of these guys on this trip, because the West Coast Trail is not for everybody. It is a challenge, and I need some folks that are up for that challenge and that we can work through some stuff together, that we're not going to be complaining or we're not going to be super tired bear. Is that, we got to get through the miles and get through the whole trip. So we got our permit and we got our dates, and then it goes into the next step as far as logistics on getting here to start the actual hike. Other thing to note about this specific hike, it is a point to point. You can go from north to south or south to north. And what we chose to do is go from south to north. The whole trail is about 75K, which maybe doesn't seem like a whole lot to you guys. You're like, whatever, Corso, that is like 2 days on the trail for me. Well, great. I don't think you've ever done this trail before, because sometimes it is 1K per hour and you are going through some super big routes. You're going up and down 4 to 6 ladders at a time, and there's very few sections where you can just truck it and really tick off those miles or tick off those Ks. So the other thing to note, says I'm sitting here on day whatever, five it is respect this trail. It is a challenge. It is a challenge that is doable, but it's one that you really need to take your time with. Don't try to hustle through it. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's really worth your time to take it slow, take it steady. We had probably 2 or 3 folks get evacuated on day 2 because they slipped on some roots and broke their ankle and broke their wrist respectively, and they had to call it early. So with this trail, it's hard to get the permit. It takes a long time to get up here, even if you're generally close in Washington or in Vancouver. So why do you want to crush it in 3 or 4 days? It's so pretty, and just like enjoy where you're going and be safe while you're doing it too. Basic travel logistics here. As you guys look at the map, it might look like it's really not that far, but there are a lot of little pieces to getting to the actual starting point, whether that's Port Renfrew or that's way up in Bamfield, in order to do this hike. So for us, we had Rollin coming in from San Diego and Nate coming in from South Dakota, so we needed to start in Seattle. You could easily fly in or drive up through Vancouver as well. For us, the trip started in Seattle. Then we drove 2.5 to 3 hours over to Port Angeles, Washington, which is actually where I'm from. And there is a car ferry that heads over from Port Angeles to Victoria. So that was a good part of one day, was just picking them up at the airport, driving, getting them over, and then taking the ferry. If you're coming from the Northeast, you could hit up Vancouver and also take some ferries and weasel over through the mainland in order to get there as well. There is another way to get to Vancouver Island, and that is through the San Juan ferry system. It is quite beautiful. It's just going to take you a little bit longer and might need a reservation for that one as well. So once you get to Victoria, then you're going to drive another 2 hours to Port Renfrew, or a little bit longer up to the Bamfield area in order to start your hike, depending on if it is the southern point or the northern point that you are starting at. The other thing to consider here is there is a shuttle that is pretty much a hiker shuttle that can go from Victoria all the way up. It does take multiple hours, so make sure to check the schedule and plan that all out. For us, we had about 2 days on the front and 2 days on the back just to get up to Port Renfrew and get back to Seattle, just to give it enough time and not rush through any of that. If you have 2 cars, that can be great. You can do a whole shuttle system, but also something to note here as you look at the map, the road from here in Port Renfrew all the way up to Bamfield takes 3.5 to 4 hours. So it's not like you can just scoot up there and scoot on back. You really have to plan how you are starting your hike and how you are ending your hike, or you're just gonna get stuck somewhere. Not the worst thing, because it is quite pretty, but it might be a little bit frustrating. Also something to note too, especially as you are coming back from the Bamfield area and the Pachena Bay area, is there's only 1 bus per day because it takes 4 hours. So again, not the easiest trail logistics to get up here to actually start your hike and to finish your hike. Oh, I'm just sitting in the old rocks here. That's pretty good. A nice little butt massage. That's not bad. Next section is our route. As I mentioned earlier, we went from south to north. And the reason why I chose that, there are a lot of great resources out there for the West Coast Trail, both in blog format and video format. And it's going to be hard any way you do it. The first section in the south is very much in the trees and very rooted, and there is also a boulder field, depending on the tides that you choose, that can be pretty slick or pretty slow going. For me, I always like eating the frog and getting the harder part out of the way first, and so that's what we chose. A little bit easier for our specific travel logistics as well. So we started in the south, started in Port Renfrew, and started hiking north. And we chose to do 5 nights, 6 days. It's kind of the more middle ground as far as the amount of time. You can definitely do it in 4 nights. It's just going to be a little bit quicker hoof through some of the sections. And if anything goes wrong or there's bad weather, then you're going to have some really tough days with 4 nights. A lot of folks do 6 to 7 nights if they have the vacation time and the budget for that, because it's really nice, and there's some beautiful places that you can just chill for a half a day and really enjoy this whole island and enjoy this area. One thing to note here too is that we got very lucky on weather. As you can see, it's quite nice, a little hazy today. We did get about 1.5 days of rain, which for the folks that have done this trail before, is if you don't get rain on the trail, then you are super lucky. It's also kind of part of the experience, because we got 1 day of consistent rain, and then about halfway through the day it started to dump. like just absolutely dump rain. I was so ridiculously soaked. We were going extremely slow through some very, very steep exposed routes in order to not slip and not hurt ourselves and just keep on moving. And I will say that if you get multiple days of rain on this hike, it is going to be extremely difficult. And I say that with a lot of caution because it's challenging enough with good weather, but with 1 or 2 or 3 days of rain, if not more, you are going to be in for a wet slog of very, very slippery routes, standing water on the trail, slippery rocks in a lot of different places, and still minding the tides along the way. So it can be very, very challenging and something to be mindful of as you're planning. And now for some fun parts about the trail that I put the doom and gloom in you, is that one of the reasons why I was super interested in doing this trail, besides the fact that it looked very, very pretty, is the fact that it was a different challenge. I like a whole lot of different kinds of hikes. I like peaking things and get to the top of things to see things and go down the trail and come back and all that kind of thing, and really cover some miles and see some things. But this one was different. There are this many ladders. There are this many bridges. There are boardwalks aplenty, some that are in very good condition and some that have been weathered through time. There are cable car crossings. There are ferry crossings. There are hiking and walking on the beach. There are these gorgeous, gorgeous coves that just keep on going. Like this right behind me, there's these gorgeous sandstone shelves that just go out into the ocean, and each little cove is super different. Really, really gorgeous area, and it changes every couple K. It's just absolutely special and different. And you're hiking along in the woods, super green and lush, with a bunch of very, very old spruce and cedar and hemlock and salal and wild berries. And then you get to a ladder, and not only is it one ladder, it's 6, and it goes down like 500 to 1,000 feet down to the beach. Like, which hike you're gonna do that does that? And thank you, all those people that put up those ladders and maintain those ladders. So really, really cool and really, really different and interesting. All right, to the meal plan. The most important part, in my opinion. We've got the permit, we've got the buddies who are gonna come, we've got the route, the logistics, all those kind of things. All right, what are we going to eat? Well, as I said before, we have 3 dudes for 5 nights. That's 5 dinners and 6 days plus snacks, and no packaged meals. As you may well know, I'm not a huge fan of packaged meals, and I'm here to share that you can eat really, really well on any style of outdoor adventure, even a long haul backpacking trip with no packaged meals and no dehydrating. It can be a tough challenge, but I'm up for that challenge, and I'm gonna share about how I went through that thought process, and also what we eventually ate when we ate it and how it turned out. So the first question that I asked my group here, my 2 buddies, is, were there any dietary restrictions? And there actually was one. Rollin doesn't eat dairy. It doesn't treat him very well, and we don't want to have a bad time on the trail, so no dairy. And that's completely okay. And you might be thinking that's super, super hard to plan for. Really not, and I'll show you what we came up with. And the thing about any meal plan, especially a longer trip meal plan, is that you need filling variety. At least I need filling variety. Some of you guys can eat just bars and jerky, or just eat instant mashed potatoes with a tuna packet for 5 or 6 days in a row. I can't do that, and I don't want my friends to be able to do that. So I am thinking about ways to provide filling, tasty meals at every meal, and have variety of flavor and variety of texture. For any meal plan, I always start in the pantry for 2 reasons. One, pantry ingredients are the building blocks for any good meal, whether that's instant mashed potatoes, instant rice, rice noodles, ramen, grits, tortillas, those kind of things. So I start in the pantry there as far as thinking about those kind of ingredients. And then I also literally start in the pantry, open up the cupboard in the door to be like, what do I have already? Okay, cool. Looks like I do have some instant mashed potatoes. Looks like I have some rice. All right. Well, that's a really great start. I don't have to rebuy anything. I already bought it, and I can use that as a good start for some meals. For this length of trip, I really want to maximize my menu engineering, as I like to call it. And what that means is that if I choose to include instant rice in the meal plan, I want to be able to use it 2 or 3 times for this length of trip. I don't want to have to buy special ingredients for each mealtime. It's just going to be too much work to pack up and probably too much bulk. And once it does come time to cook on the trail, it might just be a little bit confusing and just too much work that you just don't need to do. So for any of the pantry ingredients that I'm choosing, or any of the spice mixes, or some of the recipes that I'm choosing, is that I want them to be able to either be duplicated, literally making the same thing for 2 meals, or I can use that base ingredient to be able to mix and match and play around with some other stuff in order to make some great, tasty, filling meals. As I started really thinking about this meal plan, this is sort of what I landed on. And I kind of use it, an analogy of the top of the funnel. So I had a bunch of ideas at the top, and eventually I whittled it down to what eventually made it in the meal plan. But as you can see, I got a lot of ideas. I got, really excited and really hungry as I was, ideating and putting some things down on paper. But here, obviously, I have way too many meals and way too many options for what we actually needed. So I whittled that down further in order to really figure out what we were eating for our trip. So this is what I eventually landed on for our trip. So we have breakfast, some lunches, yes, actually cooking at some lunches. We have dinners, a couple different desserts, some general snacks. And notice that what I did here is that I didn't put exactly when we were eating it. I basically just have dinners, lunches, and breakfasts. And I think that's important to think about. Sometimes you do need to have a specific meal on a specific day for perishability, or somebody's birthday, or something like that, that you really need to have it really dialed in for night 2 or night 3. For this trip, I was really open to what the trail guided us for, meaning that one of our meals, we ate lunch at 4 o'clock because it was raining and really tough, and there was no place to stop in the forest in order to be able to cook it up safely and have something tasty and not get super wet. So that's what we did for this meal plan. Is it was just very flexible and very fluid on where we were, how we were, and also I gave the guys some options like, hey, well, do you want spam musubi bowl today, or do you want trail tacos? You decide. All right, let's go. One recipe I want to call out that is really helpful for longer haul backpacking trips is this power chia bomb recipe. You can really flavor it up in a lot of different ways with some different spice mixes, or some coconut milk powder, or some dried fruits and nuts that are your favorite. And this really helped for our trip, where we had to get up a little bit earlier and really hit the trail. And we had other couple of mornings that we, maybe took 2 hours to wake up, have some nice coffee, have a nice walk on the beach before we started hiking. But the power chia bomb is a great cold soak recipe, very high in calories, very filling, and it's all ready for you when you wake up in the morning. Just have to remember to add water and stir it up before you go to bed. Yeah, but calling out the power chia bomb is a really nice option to have in the pantry and in the meal plan for those longer trips. So after I figured out which meals were going in the meal plan, it's time to go shopping and time to pack it up. So I took the ingredients that were already in the pantry, put those on the table, also went shopping at a couple different stores. I did stop at the Asian grocery store to get some special ingredients. They have some really helpful ingredients for backpacking. Dry, really economical, super tasty, and sometimes a little bit different as well. What I did though is I put them all out on the table, organized them by recipe and ingredients. And then I went a little bit farther. What we used for this trip were some smell-proof bags, and I divvied up the recipes evenly over 3 bags. Also, what I did was I labeled the bags for general organization and put a note in my notebook about who had those numbered bags and also what was in them. Why that's helpful is that come mealtime to be like, hey, okay, awesome, we are making the samosa bowl. All right, who has that? Okay, it's in bag 2, and Nate has that bag. All right, let's pull that out, got the ingredients all in there, and then we can start cooking rather than having to pull out all the ingredients come cook time and just having everything really disorganized. The other thing I did for some of these recipes is I put some of the spice mixes directly into each Ziploc. So for example, for breakfast tacos, I put the Mexican seasoning right in there with it. But then also what I did is I packed this spice pack. Haven't necessarily done this before, and overall it's working pretty well and nice and organized. But I put my oil, my coffee, all of my seasonings, salt, Indian spices, other spices, chili paste, those kind of things, all in one spot. It was very, very easy come cook time just to bring that out, pull out the spices that I needed, and add it to my dishes. So I did a little bit of a hybrid approach as far as pre-packing and pre-seasoning the specific recipe, and also having kind of a spice pack all ready to go. Both can work. You can get it really, really dialed if you like, but I'm here to say that both options work. It's just how you want to pack it. That is our full meal plan for our 5-night, 6-day backpacking trip all the way up the coast. Let's see how it all turned out. That is an incredible meal for any night. But for night 5, that is pretty fantastic. Really great flavor, freshness from the snap peas, crunch, and different Indian flavor from the garam masala pita chips on top. But man, really, really good. All done, baby. All done. Well, we're done.
Woo!
And we are all clean. What?
Feeling good.
What?
Just jumped in a crisp, cool alpine lake.
That's a nice way to end any trail for sure.
Oh yeah, cold, clear water.
Fucking awesome. So how was the trail for you guys?
Trail was amazing. I really enjoyed how dense and lush the forest was, how difficult and varied the terrain was, just what massive scale, huge cliffs, humongous trees, giant landscape. Made me feel very small.
Yeah, there's a lot on that trail for sure. What were your takeaways?
Campsites were awesome. Every night was just a different adventure.
Yeah, like I was thinking about it. We camped on the beach every single night.
Yeah.
That's pretty special.
Yeah.
There were no woods campings at all.
No. No bugs, really. Awesome.
Also hardly any bugs.
Crystal clear Milky Way. Stars were phenomenal. No light pollution.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think one thing we were commenting as we were hiking along was it would be really, really hard with multiple days of rain.
I mean, we only had a day and a half of rain, pretty consistent rain, but it was
soul
slow drowning.
It was soul drowning and slow, and you had to be super, super careful with your steps,
Really,
or
really dangerous.
Yeah.
you're gonna hurt yourself for sure.
Found the weak points in my gear for sure.
Yeah. What were those?
Not enough dry bags.
No,
The pack was not fully waterproof. That hurt.
Yeah, that'll happen for
Yeah.
sure. So for the meal plan, all the food that we ate, what was your favorite meal?
That's a really, really difficult one. The breakfast taco, chorizo breakfast tacos,
Classic.
were pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
And the Creole pasta dinner was probably one of the most memorable for me.
So that was my favorite too, and I've never made that recipe before. So it's a really great time to test out a new recipe on day 3 or 4 of a multi-day backpacking trip. And yeah, it turned out it worked out pretty well. But yeah, that's a winner. I need to write that up and add that to the website because it's super tasty.
Yeah,
And that power chia bomb was the best way to wake up.
Power chia bomb.
Yeah, good sustained energy.
Yeah, for sure.
Easy, no time, ready to go in the morning.
Yeah, I'll be making that at home for sure.
For sure. Well, any final takeaways for the folks if they want to do the West Coast Trail?
I would say make sure you're in shape, make sure your gear is styled, you're not taking too much weight. I feel like too much weight on that trail could make it significantly more difficult. Take your time. It's pretty slow, laborious terrain with a lot of opportunity for slips and trips and falls. So take your time. What am I?
Trekking poles saved
trekking poles for
kept
you.
my teeth in my mouth for sure.
That's good.
I lean on them heavily a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's so beautiful. You want to look up, and then the second you do, a root jumps out of nowhere.
Yeah, seriously.
So you need some extra insurance for me.
Yeah,
What about you, Steve?
my main takeaway is that, looking at the trail and planning, it's 75K or about 50 miles, which isn't that crazy of a trail in the grand scheme of things for some of these long haul, backpacking trips or week-long, 10-day long trips. But it's like, just respect the trail, especially the southern part, the first couple days. It's going to be slower hiking than you probably ever done before, and that's okay because you need to stay safe and get to your points, but like respect the trail and also enjoy the trail. Like you're there, don't need to rush through it all. We met a lot of folks that were taking 7-8 days and just having some 0 days, having some, you know, couple mile days, and enjoying the waterfalls and enjoying the beach and just having a good old time. So that's my main takeaway. But
Yeah, I thought the challenging part, like where it said challenging on the website, I thought they were just overblowing it, and it was like, no way, we're gonna
I know,
cruise. We'll
totally.
be at a camp by noon, and
Right.
not.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe how slow we had to go.
yeah,
Yeah, as much time as I've logged in the backcountry and on trails, I think that was definitely the most, outside of technical climbing with ropes, that was the most focused I had to be on trails, and the most comfortable I had to be with heights doing,
Oh.
I mean, the ladders. I mean, that's something to consider that they don't really talk about is, I mean, there are ladders that are 3 to 4 stories tall, and it's wet and they're steep, and you got a heavy pack on, and there's no protection, and so if you're scared of heights, it's something to think about too.
There's some cliff edges where there's about a foot of hedge and through a straight drop down. And yeah, if the hedge wasn't there, I'd be very, very aware. You'd be much more aware that you're like hanging on the edge of the
Yeah,
ledge.
yeah,
absolutely.
for sure. Well, thanks for sharing the trail with me. Thanks for coming along. I had an
Absolutely.
awesome
Thanks, Chef
time.
Corso.
Anytime. But get out there, cook something amazing somewhere awesome, go see somewhere new, try a new trail. Boca Boca.